You already have more money than most countries can spend in a year, and somehow the hardest part is still getting a hotel to open on time. That is the first strange truth of being a trillionaire. The money stops being the problem long before the project stops being difficult. You can buy the land, you can buy the architects, you can buy the branding agency, the engineering firm, the interior design team, the construction company, the legal team, the talent acquisition firm, the private security contract, the startup fund, the operating company, and the press rollout. You can buy all of it and still watch the project slip 6 months because the plumbing system needs to be redesigned for local code, and the supplier in another country missed a shipment, and the city planning office wants revisions on a document no one mentioned 3 quarters ago. This is the part nobody understands about building an empire at that level. The number in your account has already become symbolic. It is not about money anymore. It is about sequence, about leverage, about whether the people you paid to manage the complexity can actually hold the complexity together long enough to open the doors. You are not building a hotel. You are building a machine that turns location, experience, design, and reputation into recurring cash flow across decades. And once you understand that, every decision starts to look different. The first acquisition, the first property, is supposed to be simple. A flagship hotel in a global city, 240 rooms, rooftop restaurant, spa, conference floors, private members' lounge, branded suites, a lobby designed to look effortless while costing more than most skyscrapers used to cost. The site is already identified, an old commercial block near a financial district, underused, overpriced for anyone else, and perfect for you, because overpriced means nothing when your capital is effectively unlimited. The current owners have been sitting on it for years, waiting for the right buyer, which is another way of saying they were waiting for someone who would not blink at the scale of the transaction. You blink once, just to confirm the numbers are real. They are. The land deal closes in 41 days. The acquisition price is so large that 3 banks syndicate the financing just to make the paperwork easier, even though you do not need the debt. The debt is there because the bankers want participation, and because even trillionaires still live inside systems that prefer structure over raw capital. Your team says the property has potential. Potential is always the word people use when they mean the thing needs work. It needs zoning changes, demolition, environmental remediation, foundation reinforcement, and a complete redesign of the internal layout, because the original structure was never meant to house a modern hospitality operation. But the bones are there, the neighborhood is right, the demand is real. The brand can become iconic if the execution holds. So you approve the deal, and the moment you do, you have already entered the part of the process where the money matters least. What trillionaire time feels like at your level, time has a different texture. A billionaire can spend 30 million on a mistake and move on. A trillionaire can spend 300 million and still not feel it the way ordinary people feel a car repair. The reaction is not emotional, it is operational. The project schedule now becomes the real currency. Month 1 is demolition. Month 2 is excavation. Month 3 is permitting revision. Month 4 is procurement. Month 5 is delay. By month 7, you have already spent more on consultants than most hotel chains spend opening an entire regional portfolio. You sit in meetings where the people around you talk in polished language about timeline integrity, delivery confidence, and operational alignment. What they mean is the hotel is not ready yet. The first lesson of hotel empire building is that luxury is fragile. It does not survive sloppiness. It does not survive rushed openings. It does not survive a lobby that smells wrong, a check-in experience that feels slow, a mattress that looks expensive but sleeps cheap, a service model that asks guests to tolerate friction because someone wanted the opening date to look good on a slide. At the top, guests are not paying for access. They are paying for the absence of friction. That is why the standards become brutal. The lighting has to feel warm at exactly the right angle. The elevator ride has to feel silent. The keycard has to work the first time. The staff greeting has to sound natural without sounding casual. The towels have to be heavier than the towels in the competitor's property across the street. The scent in the lobby has to be subtle enough that people remember it only as a feeling. Everything is engineered to be invisible. That is expensive. That is also the point. The brand problem. The property is one thing. The brand is another. Anyone with capital can build a hotel. Not anyone can build a hotel people remember. At your level, the question is not whether you can afford the marble, the imported wood, the art program, the chef concept, the rooftop bar, or the spa partnership. The question is whether all of those pieces produce a coherent identity strong enough to survive across 10 properties, then 50, then 200. You have seen what happens when wealthy people misunderstand this. They build a hotel that looks expensive but feels empty. They stack premium finishes onto an identity with no point of view. They create spaces that photograph well and disappear from memory the moment a guest checks out. They mistake spending for branding and branding for preference. Your team presents three concepts. One is classic luxury, designed to attract old money, diplomatic travelers, and executives who want discretion. One is modern luxury, all geometry and restraint, designed for younger wealth and global business travelers. One is destination luxury, built around the idea that the hotel itself becomes the reason people visit the city. You do not choose one, you choose a framework that allows all three to exist in different properties under one umbrella, with a core promise that stays constant: unmistakable service, deliberate design, and an experience that makes the guest feel both seen and insulated. That becomes the brand, not opulence, precision. The distinction matters. Opulence is what insecure wealth does when it wants to be noticed. Precision is what enduring wealth does when it wants to be trusted. The human problem: the first luxury hotel you build is not really being built for guests, it is being built for staff. That sounds backward until you understand how hospitality works at the highest level. A hotel does not run on architecture, it runs on people. If the people are confused, undertrained, undersupported, or emotionally detached from the mission, the entire experience leaks at every touch point. A perfectly designed space with bad service feels cheap. A moderately beautiful space with extraordinary service feels expensive. So you build the staff model before the guest model. You hire people from the best properties in the world, not just experienced people, people with standards, people who have worked at places where the expectations were high enough to be meaningful. You recruit general managers, concierges, executive chefs, engineers, housekeeping directors, revenue managers, brand leads, and a training team that can teach consistency at scale. Then you discover what every hotel empire eventually discovers. The first 100 employees are the hardest part, not because they are bad, because they are the culture. Whatever they normalize will spread. If they care, the hotel cares. If they improvise too much, the property becomes inconsistent. If they feel unseen, the service weakens in places no financial model can predict. So you create the system around them: better wages than industry average, clear promotion paths, housing support in expensive cities, training budgets that are absurd by normal standards, retreats for senior staff, performance bonuses tied to guest satisfaction and retention, leadership standards that make mediocrity uncomfortable. And still, people leave. Not because they are ungrateful, because hospitality at this level is demanding in a way most people underestimate. Guests expect perfection from people who are paid to appear invisible. That is a hard thing to live inside, for years. You learn again that money can solve recruitment. It cannot solve exhaustion. Opening night. The hotel opens 6 months later than planned. This is considered a success. Every opening date in luxury hospitality is a negotiation between ambition and reality. And reality usually wins in private. Publicly, the launch is framed as careful, deliberate, elevated. Internally, it was a cascade of revised timelines and emergency approvals, and one final week where everyone drank too much coffee and slept too little and pretended they were calm because the cameras were coming. The lobby fills, not with ordinary guests, with the first wave of the world you built this for: corporate executives, actors, diplomats, founders, family office principals, editors, wealth managers, a few people who came because it is the place to be seen, and a few who came because they genuinely want the experience and can afford not to care about the optics. The first check-in is smooth. The room upgrades work. The restaurant handles the crowd. The rooftop does exactly what the renderings promised it would do. The scent in the lobby is correct. The lighting is correct. The staff are composed. For 26 minutes, you allow yourself to believe the hard part might be over. Then a guest complains that the water pressure in the corner suites is inconsistent. Then the minibar inventory system miscounts the premium wine. Then a chef's kitchen delivery is missing an ingredient that only one vendor supplies in the region. Then a VIP arrival is delayed and the private entrance protocol gets tested for the first time under pressure. Then the soundproofing issue in one wing starts showing up in guest feedback, mild enough to ignore publicly, unacceptable enough to fix immediately. The hotel is open. Now it has to become good. That is when the real work starts. The scale problem one hotel is not a tycoon. A portfolio is. The first property proves the model, the second proves whether the model can be repeated, the third proves whether the brand is actually a system or just a lucky one-off with excellent investors. So you move, not fast, deliberately, a resort property in a coastal market, a business hotel near a major airport, a boutique property in a cultural district, a mountain retreat, a long-stay residence model for ultra-wealthy families who want privacy, a branded residence tower attached to a hotel, a conference and events property near a capital city. Each one serves a different purpose. Each one deepens the distribution of the brand. Each one teaches you something different about demand, labor, seasonality, and operating risk. And the moment the portfolio begins to scale, you notice something unexpected. The hotels are no longer the product. The system is. The procurement network, the design language, the revenue management model, the staffing pipeline, the guest data architecture, the loyalty ecosystem, the capital allocation framework. This is where hotel ownership stops being glamorous and starts being institutional. You are no longer asking, how do we make this one property beautiful? You are asking, how do we make 50 properties behave like one organism? That question is what separates a luxury owner from a hotel empire. The guest who matters. Every hotel says it serves everyone. That is not true. Hotels at the top of the market serve the guests who shape perception. The executive who comes once and brings the board back next quarter. The celebrity whose stay becomes a magazine spread. The billionaire family whose annual visit informs where their peers stay. The event planner whose endorsement fills 400 rooms in a weekend. The travel editor who notices details nobody else notices. The founder who chooses your hotel every time because it is the only place where he can sleep without feeling observed. You do not build the hotel for the average guest. You build it for the guest who influences 10 more guests. That is what luxury really is at this scale. It is not about pleasing everyone. It is about creating a gravity well around a specific kind of preference and then making that preference spread through the market. You watch the data carefully, repeat bookings, average daily rate, occupancy by segment, restaurant capture rate, spa utilization, event conversion, guest satisfaction by floor, not just by property, response time to service issues, net promoter score by market. The numbers tell you something the architectural renderings never can. A hotel can be beautiful and still underperform. A hotel can be less beautiful and still dominate because the service is sharper, the location is better, or the emotional experience is more consistent. At scale, beauty is necessary but not sufficient. That realization changes how you allocate capital. When the money becomes infrastructure, by the time the hotel group crosses the first major portfolio threshold, the enterprise has stopped behaving like a collection of buildings. It behaves like infrastructure. You have centralized finance, regional operating teams, data systems that monitor guest behavior in real time, a design office that maintains aesthetic consistency, a procurement division that negotiates across properties, A legal team focused on contracts, labor, zoning, and brand protection. A public relations arm that manages the image of the portfolio. A development team constantly sourcing the next site. Your money is no longer sitting in accounts waiting to be spent. It is flowing through systems. That is a different kind of power. A trillionaire does not think in terms of one hotel's profit margin. A trillionaire thinks in terms of capital velocity. How fast does a property stabilize? How quickly does a flagship property lift the brand? How much brand equity does one opening generate across the rest of the portfolio? Which city creates the highest halo effect? Which acquisition can be repositioned instead of rebuilt? Which market has the best labor depth? Which country offers the right balance of regulation, tourism demand, and prestige? This is not about owning beds. It is about owning choice. The choice to enter a market. The choice to reshape a skyline. The choice to set a standard competitors have to respond to. The choice to turn hospitality into a global asset class with your signature on it. That is the level where hotels stop being destinations and start being instruments. The competition, eventually, everyone notices. The legacy hotel brands notice first, then the sovereign funds, then the private equity groups, then the family offices with real estate arms. Then the old money owners who thought the market was already divided and discover that division is not ownership. They all start reacting to you. A competitor opens a new luxury tower. You study it. A rival launches a new ultra-premium concept. You track it. A legacy chain acquires an iconic property group and announces a global expansion. You adjust. You do not panic. At your level, competition is not a threat. It is a signal. It tells you where the market is moving, where the next margin is, where guest expectations are rising, where the old language of luxury is losing force, where new wealth wants new experiences and old wealth wants quieter ones, where destination travel is being redefined by privacy, personalization, and status that no longer needs to announce itself loudly. So you refine. The next wave of properties becomes less about grand lobbies and more about sequence. Arrival, recognition, check-in, the room, the view, the breakfast, the service gap that never appears, the departure, the follow-up, the invitation back. The hotel is no longer one experience. It is a choreography, and the choreography is what people remember. The private world, by the time the portfolio reaches global significance, you are no longer dealing only with public-facing hospitality. You are in the private world. Private residence clubs, ultra-exclusive villa estates, members-only urban hotels, long-term luxury housing disguised as hospitality, corporate retreat compounds, invitation-only wellness properties, properties attached to foundations, art programs, and private client ecosystems. Now the hotel is not just selling nights. It is selling belonging. That is where the margins get interesting and the complexity gets deeper. Because now you are managing relationships, not just bookings. You are dealing with families who want continuity across continents. Executives who want privacy guaranteed by policy, not by promise. High net worth guests who expect the hotel to anticipate preferences they never explicitly stated. Members who are not technically owners but behave like owners and want the service to reflect that. At this level, hospitality becomes an interface between wealth and environment. The hotel tells the guest, "You are known here." The guest tells the hotel, "I expect not to be inconvenienced." The hotel responds by making inconvenience nearly impossible. That takes layers of systems, and systems, once built well, become moat. What power looks like here, people imagine trillionaire power as loud. It is usually quiet. It looks like deciding where a new flagship goes and knowing that the decision will alter land values, labor flows, tourism traffic, vendor contracts, and neighborhood development for a decade. It looks like a property becoming the anchor for an entire luxury district. It looks like a hotel school partnering with your brand, because your standards are now the standards they want their graduates to enter. It looks like architects sending you concepts before you ask. It looks like mayors asking what it would take to get your flag in their city. It looks like a city's perception of itself changing after your hotel opens, and people start using it as the place to point to when they describe the new version of the area. This is influence through infrastructure, not speeches, not headlines, not charisma, structures. A hotel, properly scaled, is one of the cleanest expressions of power because it touches everything without looking like it is touching anything. It shapes where people gather, it shapes who feels welcome, it shapes what luxury is supposed to feel like. It shapes the surrounding economy, it shapes the city's self-image, and if you own enough of them, you begin to shape the category itself. The real ending years later, people tell the story wrong. They say you built a hotel empire because you had the money. That is not wrong exactly. It is incomplete in the way that all simple explanations are incomplete. You had the money, yes, but the money was never the differentiator. The differentiator was that you treated each property like a system, each system like a brand, each brand like an ecosystem, and each ecosystem like a long-term wager on what wealthy people actually value when they are not trying to impress anyone. They value certainty, they value discretion, they value speed, they value taste, they value consistency, they value places that make complicated lives feel simple for a night. That is the product. Not marble, not chandeliers, not rooftop views. Ease, the rarest luxury of all. And when the portfolio becomes large enough, when the hotels are profitable enough, when the brand is strong enough that new markets invite you in instead of asking you to prove yourself, you realize the thing you built was never really about rooms at all. It was about control over experience at scale. That is what makes a hotel tycoon. Not the first acquisition, not the opening night, not the magazine cover, not even the $1 trillion. The quiet understanding that every guest who walks through the door is buying a few hours where the world is held together for them by systems they will never fully see. And you built the system.